You are standing in the checkout line at the grocery store, staring at the little screen on the card reader, and your heart drops completely into your stomach. It is a Tuesday evening. You are exhausted from a long shift at work, and you know for an absolute fact that you have exactly $42.50 in your checking account because you literally checked the bank app while sitting in your car in the parking lot. You are only buying $38 worth of essentials, just enough food to get you and your family through to payday on Friday. The cashier smiles, you swipe your debit card, the machine beeps approvingly, and the receipt prints out just like normal. You walk out through the sliding glass doors feeling a massive wave of relief, thinking you successfully navigated the terrifying tightrope of the modern American working class budget. But then, you wake up the next morning, open your banking app on your phone, and physically freeze in your bed because your available balance is a suddenly negative $140. You have just been hit with 4 different $35 overdraft fees overnight, and you have absolutely no idea how it is mathematically possible. Millions of hardworking Americans have lived this exact, humiliating scenario in complete silence, convinced that they're simply terrible with money, terrible at math, or just irresponsible adults. But you're not crazy, you're not bad at math, and you absolutely did not make a mistake. You're the victim of a multi-billion-dollar algorithmic extraction system designed specifically to punish you for being working class. What you experienced was not a computer glitch or an unfortunate banking accident, but a highly weaponized mathematical equation used by some of the largest financial institutions in the country to silently drain your last remaining dollars. For decades, the American banking system has been running a covert operation behind closed doors, using specialized software to deliberately reorder your daily transactions. They do not process your purchases in the chronological order that you actually made them. Instead, they hold on to your small weekend transactions, wait until Monday night, and then intentionally process your absolute largest purchase first. This is perfectly engineered to push your balance below zero instantly. Then, every single small purchase you made afterward, the $3 morning coffee, the $5 pack of diapers, the $2 parking meter, triggers a completely separate, massive penalty. Why friend Bobby used to beat himself up over this constantly, staring at his bank statements late at night, thinking he was somehow losing his mind because his own personal ledger never ever matched what the bank claimed he did. He blamed himself, just like the entire banking system heavily relies on you to blame yourself. The reality is that this entire scheme traces its dark roots directly back to the banking deregulation frenzy of the 1990s. Before that era, banking was relatively straightforward, and local community banks actually valued keeping your deposits safe. But after sweeping legislation like the Regal-Neal Interstate Banking and Branching Efficiency Act of 1994, massive Wall Street megabanks swallowed up local branches and realized they could not sustain their explosive corporate growth just by lending money. They needed a brand new revenue stream, a guaranteed profit engine that did not rely on the stock market or changing interest rates. So, they essentially invented the modern penalty fee economy. They quietly transformed the humble checking account, which was once a basic utility for everyday Americans, into a highly sophisticated financial trap. In recent years, banks have quietly pulled in tens of billions of dollars annually strictly from overdraft and non-sufficient funds fees alone. This staggering amount of money is not coming from wealthy investors or corporate accounts. It is being extracted directly from the pockets of everyday Americans who are living paycheck to paycheck, struggling to keep the lights on and put food on the table. The worst part is not just that they took your hard-earned money while you were sleeping. The truly enraging part is the completely legal, heavily lobbied loophole they used to justify this blatant financial theft, disguising it as a helpful feature meant to protect you. And when you find out exactly how they successfully convinced the federal government to let them keep doing this to you, it will make you absolutely sick to your stomach. They successfully convinced the federal government that letting your checking account drop into the negative was actually a vital customer service, heavily marketing it as a generous courtesy, so you would never have to face the ultimate embarrassment of having your card declined at the checkout counter. Following the devastating global crash of the 2008 financial crisis, When major American megabanks were bleeding unimaginable amounts of revenue and facing massive public backlash for destroying the economy, they suddenly needed a very quiet, very reliable way to rebuild their massive profit margins. They knew they could not aggressively push toxic mortgages anymore, and they could not instantly jack up traditional interest rates without drawing regulatory fire. So they turned their sophisticated corporate crosshairs directly onto your everyday checking account. They rebranded the act of overdrafting into a warm, friendly-sounding service called Overdraft Protection, effectively selling you an unregulated, ultra-high-interest payday loan completely disguised as a benevolent financial safety net. They poured millions upon millions of dollars into intense lobbying efforts to ensure that federal regulators allowed them to keep this highly predatory practice alive. Their main argument to politicians in Washington was that everyday, hardworking Americans desperately needed this exact service to buy emergency groceries or life-saving prescription medicine during tough times. But the raw data from federal watchdogs tells a completely different, absolutely heartbreaking story about what is really happening to your money. If you look at the actual statistics, the vast majority of these financially crippling overdraft fees are not triggered by massive, unavoidable emergency expenses like a sudden hospital bill or a major car transmission repair. They're almost entirely triggered by everyday, mundane purchases of $24 or less. A simple $4 cup of coffee to get you through a morning shift suddenly ends up costing you $39. A $12 fast food run for your kids after a long day of school becomes a $47 financial disaster by the next morning. Even more infuriating is the widely documented fact that nearly 80% of all these billions of dollars in banking fees are paid by just 9% of total account holders. These are absolutely not wealthy individuals making careless accounting errors or mismanaging massive trust funds. These are working-class people with average daily balances of less than $350, effectively creating a cruel, reverse Robin Hood system where the absolute poorest Americans are literally subsidizing the free checking accounts, perks, and rewards programs of the wealthy. When my buddy Bobby finally sat down and read the microscopic fine print on his account agreement, he discovered that he had unknowingly clicked a tiny, brightly colored button on an ATM screen years ago. That single tap legally gave the bank full permission to protect his daily transactions, completely unaware that he was voluntarily opting himself into an endless, inescapable cycle of $35 penalties. This is exactly why this nightmare keeps happening to you, year after year, no matter how obsessively you try to budget your money or check your balance. The entire modern banking interface is built on a foundation of behavioral psychology and digital manipulation, specifically designed to make the extraction of your cash completely invisible until the exact moment it is too late to do anything about it. They intentionally make your available balance confusing on their mobile apps. They will quickly include pending deposits that have not actually cleared the system yet, while simultaneously hiding pending withdrawals that they know for a fact are coming. They create a deliberate mirage of financial safety, giving you a false green light to swipe your debit card with confidence. By the time the actual complex math settles in their corporate servers at midnight, the trap door opens and your hard-earned money is gone. You are left frantically scrambling to borrow cash from friends or family just to bring your account balance back up to zero, let alone figure out how you're going to pay your upcoming rent or electric bill. The banks know exactly what they are doing, and they heavily rely on your exhaustion, your busy schedule, and your personal shame to keep you from ever fighting back. But what if I told you there's a hidden mechanism, a completely legal and surprisingly simple way to flip the script, rip up their algorithmic rulebook, and force these megabanks to give you your money back? There actually is a way to stop this financial bleeding immediately, and it starts with realizing that you possess far more power over these massive financial institutions than they ever want you to believe. The very first thing you must do, right now, is pick up your phone and call your bank's customer service line to explicitly revoke your overdraft protection opt-in. Back in 2010, the Federal Reserve actually passed an update to regulation a federal rule that legally forced banks to stop automatically enrolling everyday Americans into these predatory overdraft programs for everyday debit card transactions. The banks panicked, realizing their biggest cash cow was about to be slaughtered. So they spent massive fortunes engineering aggressive marketing campaigns to trick millions of people into voluntarily opting back in, making it sound like a premium security feature. You have the absolute federal right to opt out at any time. When you call and demand they remove this so-called protection, the worst thing that will ever happen if you're short on funds is that your card will simply be declined to the register. A split second of awkwardness at the grocery store is infinitely better than waking up to a devastating cascade of $140 in penalty fees. Once you have officially opted out, your next immediate step is to forcefully reclaim the money they have already stolen from you. You absolutely do not have to just blindly accept those unfair corporate charges as a permanent, inevitable loss. You need to call the bank back, ask to speak directly to a retention specialist or a manager, and confidently request a courtesy refund for all recent overdraft fees. You must remain incredibly polite, but absolutely firm, stating clearly that you have been a loyal customer and you're actively considering moving your direct deposits to a local credit union if these penalties are not reversed. When my friend Bobby finally gathered the courage to make this exact phone call, his hands were physically shaking, but he used that exact phrasing and successfully wiped out over $200 in bogus fees in less than 10 minutes. The banks have unwritten internal algorithms that allow representatives to waive a specific number of fees per year, but they're strictly trained to never offer this information unless you boldly demand it. This entire awakening is about triggering a massive, permanent mindset shift for hardworking, working-class Americans. You must stop internalizing the deep shame that these massive, multi-billion-dollar corporations have artificially projected onto you. You are navigating an incredibly hostile economy where basic survival costs are skyrocketing, and managing a tight margin is not a moral failure on your part. If your current megabank refuses to respect your money, you must fire them immediately. You need to permanently move your hard-earned paycheck to a localized, community-based credit union or a modern financial technology platform that has completely abolished all overdraft fees by default. You are the ultimate prize in the banking sector, and your direct deposit is the exact fuel that keeps their entire empire running. It is time to aggressively take back your financial dignity, protect your daily wages, and refuse to be the silent victim of corporate algorithm theft ever again. If you or anyone you know have ever been secretly crushed by these phantom bank fees, I need you to hit that like button, subscribe to the channel, and comment down below with your worst banking horror story so millions of other Americans can finally see that they are not alone.